City of Stevens Point Sustainability Commission meeting recorded May 7th, 2026.
This is the City of Stevens Point Sustainability Commission. Take the roll. Alderman Sam Lang. Here. Alderman Allison Beer.
Here. Heather
Phelps.
Here and correct.
Thank you. Robert Mitch.
Here.
Doug is not. Greg Knight is here. And guests tonight, we have Adam Kuhn from the city. We have Katie Liovernash, Caity Carmody, Bill Fisher, and Heidi Vesey from UW-SP. I'm sorry, that's Hattie. Hattie. And then we have another alder.
Jackie Guthrie, Alder District 2.
Okay. Okay. So persons who wish to address the Sustainability Commission on specific agenda items must register the request at this time. Does anybody wish to address the Sustainability Commission? If not, persons who wish to address the Sustainability Commission on a non-agenda item must register the request at this time. Is there anybody here for a non-agenda item? Nope. So we'll move on to discussion and possible action. First, we'll approve the meeting minutes from the March 5th Sustainability Commission meeting. One correction I just want to mention to the minutes that you got in your package. For the closing section, it said the next meeting scheduled for April 2nd. Now that was canceled due to the ice storm and moved to the May 7th. So there is that correction to the meeting minutes. But other than that, does anybody else have any additions or corrections to the minutes of March 5th? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Sam.
I'll second.
Second by Robert. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's done. Moving along. We'll have a presentation and a discussion facilitated by Katie Liovernash, Community Development Educator at UW-Extension Portage County, and Caity Carmody, Technical Coordinator and Analyst for Climate Pollution Reduction at Wisconsin Department of Administration, Office of Sustainability and Clean Energy. The overall purpose for tonight is to discuss where we're at as a commission and what we've accomplished to date, and where we're going to go from here. We want to start mapping out some objectives and timelines to figure out how we want to get to the end of 2026 and then also beyond. In our board packet, we did get a planning meeting agenda that was put together by the two Katies. Now that was updated, so what was in your package is been modified. I do have some current copies of that, so I'll just hand that out to commission members. It's got the same information basically, but it's a little bit, as we discussed this, we had an extra month to think about this meeting tonight, so we've updated what we originally had attached in the original agenda. So that's why it's been updated. And then this will become part of the meeting minutes as well. So I think at this point then, I'm going to hand this meeting off to the two Katies, and they're just going to walk us through. We'll use this handout that I just gave you as kind of what we're going to follow along here and sort of organize tonight's discussion. So,
Okay, great. Thank you, Greg. Yeah, to give you some context, obviously you've all been meeting as a commission for the last year. I was, myself and Caity Carmody were contacted by Greg January, February, somewhere in there, just to kind of start talking about, hey, we want to put together a sustainability climate action plan, and just kind of looking at what that process could look like. So tonight's meeting is really just to do some like baseline like logistical planning as far as like timeline. Katie's going to give a presentation on as you see that's what's up there, the sustainability, resilience, and climate action planning. But I did want to start briefly with just some introductions because I don't know all of you. You don't know us. Obviously, you guys know each other. But I would be curious just to hear each of your names, if you're representing like a district or another organization, and just why you chose to be a part of the Sustainability Commission. And I guess maybe we should introduce ourselves first.
Sure. Hi. I'm Caity Carmody. Sorry, it is Carmody, not Carmody, but that's okay.
I'm sorry. I didn't ever hear you say your last name.
No, I never say your last name, so that's fine. So as Greg said, I'm the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant, which is a program that our office runs. I'm the Technical Coordinator and Analyst for that program, which pretty much means that I was responsible for all the analysis and research associated with the state's climate action planning effort. And so our office, which I'll get into a little bit more during my presentation, but I work for the Office of Sustainability and Clean Energy at the Department of Administration for the state. We, are very much focused on state level actions, but obviously we acknowledge that like climate action happens at the local level, like 100%. And well, in a lot of ways. And I live here in Stevens Point, like a block from here. And so it's been my privilege to work for the state. And when I met Greg through the UW-SP climate action planning work, and so connected that way. And of course, I have a great passion for what you guys are working on here too, because it directly impacts me in my personal life as well. So, so that's my background.
Perfect. I'm Katie Liovernash. I am with UW-Madison Division of Extension Portage County. So UW-Madison is a statewide organization, but we have offices all across the state with county-based educators focused on a whole range of topics, agriculture, 4-H, human development and relationships, health and well-being. I'm primarily focused on economic development and community development within Portage County. And I guess like a big part of my job is helping facilitate strategic planning efforts or conversations such as this, and moving other economic development priorities forward. I also have a personal interest in, I know climate action is important and sustainability, and trying to weave my way into that avenue as much as I can. So I'm really going to be here as a facilitator for the conversation. We won't get into like true planning today, but we're calling this the plan for the plan tonight. And I think Katie and I will make a good team between content expert and facilitation help. But again, just want to get some brief intros from each of you and why you chose to be on the Sustainability Commission.
Heather?
All right. So my name is Heather Phelps. I'm not here as a representative of them, but in my day job, I'm with the Wisconsin Center for Environmental Education at UW-SP. So I provide our hands-on resources with a particular interest and focus on energy and forestry. And I guess I personally feel very strongly that climate change is like the challenge of our time. And so after I advocated for the passing of the Stevens Point net zero plan and the creation of this commission, and then they're like, okay, well, we can't start it quite yet because we don't have enough people to be on it. I was like, oh, so if I want this thing to exist, then maybe I need to actually like put my name in the hat to participate in it. So, yeah, I've been glad to learn more about how the city works, and I'm really excited to see what we can do in terms of sustainability here.
Awesome. Allison Burr, District 5 Alder, and in my day job, I'm the recycling coordinator for Wapaka County. And I graduated from UW-SP with the waste degree, and I care, I guess, about sustainability and the environment because I live there, and I like living. So I want to keep doing it for a while, so I'd like it to be healthy.
My name is Greg Knight. I'm retired. Recently moved to the Stevens Point area about 3 years ago. Back when this effort was getting established, I just wanted to participate in it. As a former federal employee, we dealt with climate issues and long-range planning. And then as a city of Stevens Point, it's just been impressive to me what the city does as far as individual property owners and sustainable things like native pollinator gardens and lawns, but also many other things that the city does, and that's one of the reasons I live here, and so I'm interested in just maintaining that quality of life.
I'm Sam Lang. I'm also the District 9 Alder. It's a bit of a story how I get here. I'd say it goes back to 2008. I was a student, and I saw this city adopt a path to a sustainable Stevens Point. And I was like, these are the kind of people I want to live with. These are the people that get it, and they want to create a space in Wisconsin, and I'd like to be a part of that. And so I designed an individually planned program and proposed it to the UW Stevens Point of, I want a sustainability degree. I would like to think I'm the first student that knocked on that door and said, hey, we don't got this thing yet. And, well, fast forward, 2024, we adopt as a council a path, a commitment to climate and a carbon reduction. So this has kind of just been a passion of mine for a long, long time, and I'm happy to serve and help out in any way I can to achieve many of the goals that so many in our community have brought forward and commented on. There's a lot of good work that we already have in front of us that we need to do some follow through on, and that's what I'm hoping I can do here is just carry a torch forward that's already been lit here in this community decades ago, and that's why I'm here.
Awesome.
Rob McKitch. I'm a professor at the university in our soil and waste resources area. Involved in all sorts of things on campus, such as our newly formed Integrated Institute of Sustainability, which has just been launched within the last year and a half. Some of the classes that I'm doing involve on-campus things, but we also do all sorts of projects within the general central Wisconsin area, so it seemed like a very, very good fit to try to be included in this, and I guess I got elected.
And they let you in.
Yes.
Well, thank you all for sharing, and I think it's just nice to reground ourselves in why we're here and the work that we're trying to accomplish, so thank you all for serving on the commission. You're doing really great work. Again, the objectives for this meeting is really to ground ourselves in what climate action planning is and just kind of align on the structure and timeline that we want to follow. Greg has, shared, you've met for the last year as a commission to learn about different things that the different departments are working on, and now we're at this point where you, want to get organized and make a report and recommendations to the city. So again, today is really to just start developing that timeline and make sure we're all on the same page for the next, whatever that timeline looks like next year or so. So I'm going to hand it over to Greg to kind of just provide a summary of where you've all been and where you hope you're going.
Okay, so I'll just ask the commission members, you've got a copy of the 2025-26 meeting calendar presentation that was in the board packet there that was sent out with the agenda, and that's the update, or basically the laundry list of all the meetings we've had to date. 14 in total, 15 tonight. So what that's covered is and let me just back up a little bit. As mentioned earlier by Sam, City of Stevens Point back in 2008 created a document called the Path to Sustainability. So in a sense, this commission is a continuation of that work. That Path to Sustainability was, there was an updated report in 2017 which highlighted some of the accomplishments from, 2008. So over a 10-year period, there were some things done, but then there was also identified things that were not accomplished. And I'll mention one because I think it'll come up later tonight in part of my input, which is the original 2008 plan proposed or suggested that the city should establish some city employee with responsibilities for sustainability, to help coordinate this effort. And that was reiterated again in the 2017 update, that position within the city is needed. Fast forward, we have a Sustainability Commission established, which is what we're on right now. We're all serving the first initial 2-year term, and there's some 3-year terms on the commission. One of the things, and has been mentioned before, as we come up on the end of 2026, is there'll be 3 commission positions expiring, and with the others expiring after year 3. So we're already in our 2nd year, and we're closing in. I know it's the beginning of summer, but fall will be here before we know it. And
don't rush me, Greg.
Yeah, don't say
and we need to start thinking ahead. So, and this is my paranoia. I always have to start much earlier than anybody wants to, but I just want to be ready to go. So, but the issue there, really is, we're at a point where we want to have this discussion tonight. And then I'm also going to suggest that between me and probably our 2 Alder members here, we should probably touch base with the mayor, say in the next couple of weeks or whenever he's available, only because it would be a good time to just have a sit-down conversation with the mayor just to brief him and then kind of see where he's at with this. I'm suggesting that when we get to November of this year, the November 16th Common Council meeting, this commission should probably be on the agenda to brief the full council on what we've done, for the last 2 years, and then our recommendations for what we need to be doing going forward. Number 1 being, we think this commission is still needed. There's still work to be done. What do we think that is and why? So, we've met with pretty much all the departments of the city, so I think, as documented in our meeting minutes, and you got a compiled copy of all those meeting minutes that we've had to date, that lists all the departments and people that we have met with. And so if we would go through that information, we could start sorting out and listing things that we think the city is already doing in terms of sustainability and resilience, and then that would help give us an idea of that big picture. Adam Kuhn with the city is also working on the greenhouse gas inventory, and that's still being worked on, and that's still a critical piece of information. We've also met with the UWSP Office of Sustainability. The university is a major entity in this city, and it's doing some really great stuff along the lines of sustainability, and many of the things that they do overlap with things that the city's also doing or could be doing more of, and there's certainly major opportunities for collaboration. Did you want to say?
I'll just put in a plug. If anyone has not yet read through the appendices of the UWSP Climate Action and Resilience Plan, their initial document was just the one that I believe we were briefed on, was quite general. We have these goals, and now that they have the appendices released, those are the ones that really drill down into like, okay, buying batteries for buildings to deal with power outages, and the much more specific recommendations that I think are really good ideas for us to be considering as we think about recommendations for the city as well.
Greg, if I can chime in as well, just to follow on what Heather said, we are doing a lot at the university, but a lot of what we're doing at the university involves the community and are things that will affect the community at the same time. So we're definitely not in a silo, and we want to engage with the community as much as we possibly can.
Okay. I'll also mention that, and I think this has already been said, but I think it's an important point, which is the university is really an important resource that the city can leverage. And that's just something I want everybody to understand, that we have a tremendous resource right in our own town that we really should leverage. Okay. We met with Focus on Energy, new person, replacing the Focus on Energy person that worked with the city for many years, who then retired. So what we learned from that is that there are still opportunities for the city to benefit from that program. We also met with the city of Middleton. They're a city of similar size to ours and complexity. They have been through this Sustainability Commission process. And my big takeaway from listening to the city of Middleton folks was how their commission started out pretty much the same as we're starting out, which is the commission that we have this first 2 years, and then how they did the same thing, but then transitioned to something more stable and sustainable. Again, that it required the city to put more resources into helping that commission get its work done by having a city person who is actually also a member of the commission, so that they could continue. And as a result of that, they produced some pretty good projects coming out of that. So now they're kind of in the phase of they're getting stuff done. They're working on things. And they also collaborate with their surrounding communities, and particularly their school district. And so we have many of the same opportunities. Recycling Connections. Susan Schiller, Executive Director, currently working on downtown recycling. They've an organization that's been around the city for a couple of decades, longer than that even, working on issues of sustainability, and particularly recycling and waste management. Maybe one thing to mention too is the state is looking at how much organic material is going into landfills, and recognizing that there's too much going into landfills, and someday we could see mandates for cities and towns to do a better job of keeping organics out of the waste stream. And so how are we going to do that? Well, UWSP is already working on it. Recycling Connections has been thinking about that for a long time. We also have other organizations like Bucket Ruckus that are currently doing this kind of thing. So that's kind of an example of there has been, the city has a long tradition of working on sustainability issues. So when we talk about this and we talk about this commission, this is nothing new. The question is how can we keep this ball rolling and maybe get more significant things done? Okay, so what might we still need to do yet? What else do we still need to do? Probably the biggest thing that stands out right now, I would say, is the greenhouse gas inventory that's being worked on by Adam Kuhn with the city. That's a big piece of information. When we had his presentation earlier this year, we thought that he would be ready to present maybe August 6th. That was just sort of a tentative date put down. I'm not sure what, the latest on that is. That might actually be delayed or have to come later. But if Adam wants to maybe update us on that?
Yeah, just briefly. So our grant deadline through the Public Service Commission is, I think, mid-September. So I think when we last spoke, Greg, we put an August deadline, as an August presentation to the commission as a assumption that 95% of the work would be done by then. Obviously, if stuff changes, I'll let you folks know, but I think at this point, August is still doable.
Okay, so that's still a good date yet?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. I will leave it at that on our meeting calendar then.
Didn't expect that.
So that's going to help us later tonight when we're discussing our timelines. So that we're still going to be working on. Important piece of information. Other things that we haven't done yet is, so for example, Bucket Ruckus, Portage County Solid Waste Recycling Director. We haven't met with those folks, and that would be on the topic of food waste diversion from landfills. And the question would be, is that a meeting that we still want to have, or do we have other things that we have to do between now and end of the year? I guess the other thing I have on there on that calendar is I had like fleet management, planning, and replacement tools, and that was just simply a specific issue that came up in the course of our visits with all the different county department or city departments. The fleet has a big impact on greenhouse gas emissions, so we talked about that, but that's kind of more of a topic aimed at, how we manage fleet. Is that a question that's too early to get into at this stage? Do we have to get a plan together first before we start diving into details? That's what it sort of strikes me as.
Are you kind of looking at like an economic impact of like our planning? Is that kind of what we're looking at? Is like if we were to phase in hybrids across our fleet, what is the economic impact over if you like at least projected to be kind of thing?
So it would be looking at how do we more efficiently manage the fleet of the city. So across all departments, everybody has vehicles. It also includes heavy equipment, dump trucks, plow trucks, excavators, all the tools the city has. How do we more efficiently manage that? But then issues of hybrids, electrification. The city already has an electric vehicle, some hybrid vehicles, and understanding some of the cost reductions and efficiencies that come with those vehicles versus the traditional gas engine. So this would be sort of taking a deep dive into fleet management and fleet planning and seeing what kind of cost savings could we recognize, as well as the benefits of reducing greenhouse gases.
I'd be very curious about that, especially seeing what we've been able to do in our fire department over the last couple of years with fleet planning and like with J.B. Moody's being able to plan out so many years and purchases on a fire. And I forget how many. It was a couple $100,000 I'm like, don't hold me to the numbers on like that, but like we saved a lot on our latest equipment because we had planned to purchase it so far ahead. And that's one of these things I'd hope we could template across other city operations by knowing we're going to replace it. We know it's going to get replaced, so we get the better resale value on it by, trading it in early and replacing it. But we've been limping other pieces of equipment along in the past, so I'd be curious to understand that better.
Okay.
I don't know when we want to do that, but I'd like to.
And Greg, if I could chime in on the food waste aspect as well, I think it is important for us to chat with Kelly Adlington with Bucket Ruckus and Amanda Haffley with Portage County Solid Waste on the food waste side. Our most recent Wisconsin waste audit indicated that 30% of the material going into landfills is food and organic waste. The current farm bill going through at the federal level has new language in there for incentives towards farmers using compost, which we are looking at to kind of incentivize getting more composting and food diversion activities happening across the nation, and there's no reason why we can't jump on that.
Okay. So those would be two items that we potentially could put on our calendar. Other things, there was mention of Midwest Renewable Energy Resource site visit. Also, city facility buildings master planning for LEED. That was, when we were reviewing city facilities and buildings, that was something a topic that came up. In terms of greenhouse gas emissions, if you have a good, complete inventory of all your city facilities and buildings, do we need all the buildings? Are there opportunities for consolidation? These are more long-range type goals, but...
Yeah, so people please jump in and correct me here, but so I gather the city is planning on building a new building down by the river to do a lot of government stuff. So whatever stage the planning for is for that building, it would be good to know what the plans are sustainability-wise, and are there ways in which that could be pushed one notch further.
I wonder if I might speak to that.
Jackie Guthrie, Alder, District 2. The phase of the new City Hall, which will house many of our administrative teams, which is located on Ellis and Water Street. So yes, very close, Heather, to the river. We are currently out for bid for contractors, and we will be itemizing some additions to the building with initial bid, including things like covered parking, backup generator, and a solar array. And so since the contractors have been asked to provide us with quotes for just the base building, but then those separate itemized issues, gosh, would I love the Sustainability Commission's opinion on what makes sense to prioritize in the initial construction and what we can wait on in terms of prioritization. That is, like, I will be able to see the dollar amount, but I won't know what spending on the front end on a generator versus spending on the front end on a solar array does for us long term. And so if we have to choose from those itemized numbers or itemized items, boy, would this commission be a great asset in terms of advising council on what to include in the front end on that build. So we'll be getting those builds from contractors in the next month.
Awesome.
Very timely.
Thank you for bringing that up, because absolutely, when it comes to making these decisions, that kind of information is so relevant, and I would love to be able to look at that before, like, oh, we're going to put this thing on first versus this other thing that we could also be doing right now.
Or we could apply for a grant for this component, and so why should we push that off to the side? These are all conversations that if we're all a part of, maybe we can really maximize what it does for the community in terms of cost-benefit analysis. Adam, anything that I've missed? No? Okay.
When would you want that information?
Well, I think an appropriate item today is to, if the commission is agreeable, is to inform the mayor and the director of Community Development, Jared Kivula, that the commission would like to be in the process some way of the review and would like to advise council before they make a decision about which contractor to go with and which of those itemized items to put in an initial, right? We'll have to defend it to the taxpayers, and so we want to make good choices, and we would really be well served. So just indicating to that director and to the mayor that you would like to have an opportunity to review time to evaluate and the opportunity to advise the council before we make that decision is an appropriate next step, in my opinion.
Review the contractor proposals.
Yeah. So let's say one says a solar array would cost this much and we'd advise this much energy and this is a backup generator, right? Getting in the same room with someone who knows grants well and someone who understands that contract with the contractors, right, would serve us well as a community.
I love that. And while we're talking about it, this is just one of these things on the path to a sustainable Stevens Point. Green building and energy. I see as goal 2, the city will require energy modeling as part of architectural designs in all new public building construction. I feel like seeing where there's embedded carbon when we're looking at meeting our carbon commitments as these proposals would be very helpful. I don't think we have that as part of our requirements yet, and like maybe Adam can speak to that as like our architectural designs when we're getting requests for proposals and like I don't think these energy modelings are part of these design requirements yet. I was just wondering if there's an interest in like maybe like making that a requirement in the future as it's part of our goal and how we would go about like maybe a proposal of changing how we do things in the future, because we're not there apparently right now. But I'd find that helpful as somebody who's making the decisions on like what to prioritize and understanding whether this sets us back a few years on our carbon commitments or it's like, oh no, actually this is going to help us meet that thing. So just as we're looking at getting information about our energy and these new constructions, I'm goal 2 in our path to a sustainable Stevens Point when it comes to green building and energy. Seems like we could do some follow through on it. It's timely.
Okay.
Add something right now.
Can you come up?
Yeah, and Lead 5, maybe you know about the version 5, and actually we have that kind of requirement.
Is that for the university?
Not for university, generally speaking, because LEED is for everywhere.
Okay.
Yeah, and we have that kind of language, and actually greenhouse gas emission is one of the pillar. Yeah.
LEED 5?
LEED 5, version 5 from April.
Okay.
Which is in action. Sorry.
No, sure.
Okay, so this is would be an action item.
Yeah, it sounds like this is something we are being asked to support the city in a very, very timely fashion. So yeah, if you're able to reach out to those leads, then I would be entirely in favor of if it's next month already, or as soon as would fit with the city timeline, getting an agenda item to look at these and discuss them as a commission and be able to make a recommendation to the city.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of my question is how soon does the commission need to respond?
It's my opinion, but this is my naive opinion, that you could already reach out and ask for what the design specs are for these itemized items. I don't know why I can't think of a better way to say that. And you might already be able to evaluate and suggest a prioritization, even without contractor bids, to get your conversation happening in parallel. And then once they come back, you might be well primed to say, this contractor offered the best rate on these two items, the solar array and this one. And since those are the ones that we'd love to see in the initial build of the building, we would like, right, that, so already seeing what those items are and beginning discussion as a commission will help us once those bids come in.
And do you have an idea when the bids are due?
Adam, do we know when the bids are due?
I believe it's in a couple of weeks. pretty soon.
It was a 4-week opening from late April, if memory serves.
Okay.
And they've already been doing walkthroughs with contractors of the space. I am so excited that your commission is talking about doing, and I get that we need to sit back and talk about values and concepts. The work of the city is happening in parallel, and we would benefit from your advisement to the extent that you can juggle and chew gum at the same time. We're building a really big structure that should serve the city for the next 50 to 100 years, and it will be very visible downtown. And so for a number of reasons, what a cool opportunity to practice the doing, if you so choose, and getting involved in advising us, many people who don't have your academic backgrounds, on what we should be prioritizing and what we can defend to taxpayers who tell us every day that their taxes are too high and they don't want to spend more money. What makes sense to spend money now up front on this building that will save us environmentally, cost-wise, health-wise, going forward, right? It just feels ripe to engage.
Okay, so to do that then, I guess what I would do, I mentioned earlier that between the two alders and myself, we should meet with the mayor to get his opinion on commission, where we're headed, and some briefing there. And then we could also tackle this topic too, because it sounds like we need to do this like right away versus wait. So I guess my question is, can Sam and Allison shoot me some dates and times that I can send to the mayor's executive secretary to set up the meeting? I don't know what his calendar is like, so but I'll just try to say, we'd like to meet as soon as possible about these topics.
I'm a retired person. I'm pretty wide open, so whenever you guys can do it, I'll try and make it work. I got a lot of flexibility.
Okay, so shoot me some dates that work for you, dates and times, and then I will talk to the mayor's secretary and see if we can set up a meeting time and work on this stuff. So, okay. Anything else? I think as far as my part there, then I don't have any other topics. I guess one of the things I want to mention though is for the month of July.
And
I'm going to be on vacation.
I will probably also be gone for the July.
Yeah, so what I'm suggesting is July is probably like a month where we won't have a meeting. And normally it would be on the 2nd of July, which is like right before the 4th. So I'm just taking that off the calendar, if that's okay with everyone.
And I'm not available either, so that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. But just to say, is everybody still good for August 6th? That's Adam, we got tentatively. So for the big picture then, what we have is we have the September 3rd meeting date, we have October 1st, November 5th, with hopefully we can meet with the city council on the 16th. So that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to meet November 5th. But then the last meeting date in 2026 would be December 3rd. And then after that, 3 of our terms, it's mainly the 2 alders and myself, our terms expire at the end of that. So that's where we're going to be in commission transition. So
Greg, if I may, that would be abnormal. Terms usually end in April. So your commission might be unique, but Adam and I are both making eyes at what you said, and I want to check that.
Did we start it in November? Did we start our appointments in November?
That is documented. That's why I said that.
Okay.
I'm like,
That's very unique. Sorry.
Okay. But that was the But if that's different, let me know.
And I will just put in that for the November meeting, just as someone who has done group projects in the past, I strongly suspect that we will want to meet then so that we can actually make sure we know exactly what we are going to say to the city council later that month. So we might not want to plan on getting that day off.
Okay, so we'll leave that on the calendar. And then, post city council meeting, hopefully there'll be some direction on filling the expired terms or what's going to happen there. Do people want to roll over terms? I won't be chair after that because I'll have been in it 2 years. So, I have to set that aside.
Plea to our public that if you would like to get involved, please apply. If this is something that's passionate, as several of us up here, this only happens when our people show up. So if there's some people that like to step down, this is something that will take the work of our community members. So if there's a time to step up and you guys want to get involved, if this is something passionate, please put an application in to serve on one of our boards. Maybe the Sustainability Commission is the one for you.
And Doug isn't here tonight. We could elect him chair right now.
Because he is the alternate, and that's what happens when you miss the meeting. Okay, so I'll just leave the calendar discussion at that. We do have a June 4th date, and we'll probably have that discussion later in the presentation as far as things we want to get done. So I think I've probably said enough right now. So
My turn?
Okay.
Okay, let's see if it still works. Hi.
Hello.
Okay, great, cool. So the first two slides here, I just want to say, I wanted to give you some context. I can call myself a subject matter expert, but it's helpful to prove that I'm a subject matter expert on this. So our office, the Office of Sustainability and Clean Energy at the state of Wisconsin, has been charged by the governor with getting the state to 100% clean electricity or carbon-free electricity by 2050. That was our initial charge. And then since then, we've done a number of different planning efforts around that. So we also helped with the Governor's Task Force on Climate Change, their report that they put together, which had a number of different recommendations: mitigation, adaptation, resiliency, which I'll get into those if you're not familiar with those terms. But we helped put that report together and then came out with the state's clean energy plan in April of 2022. And that was actually shortly before or after I came on, so I didn't have a whole lot to do with the clean energy plan at the time. That was our director, but since then, we've done a couple other things. So in the summer of 2023, we received a $3 million planning grant from the EPA to do mitigation planning or climate pollution reduction planning. And as part of that, there's a number of different deliverables. The first was a priority plan that we did for March of 2024. And then we are so very close to pushing out the state's comprehensive climate action plan. And we're anticipating this month for that to be released as well. And those two things have been the bulk of my work. So I have a little bit of background in this. So with that, sustainability planning, I say brace yourself. The comprehensive climate action plan is coming. This was my meme that I shared with everybody for this, because it definitely felt like a humongous undertaking, right? If you really think about it, it can feel very daunting, much like winter is coming in Games of Thrones. But I want to bring you back to your purpose and powers. So this I got directly from the charter, I believe. And I simplified it on the next slide because that's a lot of text. But the big things that I pulled out of this was that it is the responsibility or the purpose of the commission to study and make recommendations regarding strategies, projects, priorities, investments. And it doesn't specifically say that there is a set timeline or form or function in how you do that. which is, why I love the topic of the new building and the city hall, because that's exactly the kind of stuff that your purpose and powers are instructing you to do. So I broke it down a little bit, pulled out some of those key budget or those keywords as well, so that you can see here what your charge is. And so study and make recommendations on essentially government operations around sustainability. And those of us who work in sustainability and the folks in this room all know that it really isn't like one field, right? It's more of a state of mind and like how you approach different things. So those focuses that are listed there, landscape conservation, clean water, et cetera, those are ways that we think about sustainability, but it goes far beyond that. Efficient use and deployment of resources is a wonderful catch-all for the rest of it. So I think you have right there your purpose and powers has a pretty clear charge that you can weigh in on decisions that the city is making and give your voice to those things and make recommendations. So I was really happy to see that. And then I would also point out that the quote about like the work of the city is happening in parallel, both Katie and I wrote that down because we were like, oh my God, that's good. But it's so true, like, and I can speak to that in our office planning as well. Developing a plan takes time, it takes effort. The measures that you put in the plan, some of them might already be well underway by the time you get them in there. And that's not to say that you have to wait for a plan to be done before you can start making those considerations and those recommendations. So very happy to just highlight that here because I think that's a good point. So I brought up the three, what we typically think of as like the three domains of sustainability or climate action. Mitigation, resilience, and adaptation are the buckets that we use to sort of describe different types of strategies. Mitigation is about reducing greenhouse gas emissions, so lowering the impact that we have on the changing climate, or enhancing opportunities for carbon sequestration or carbon sinks, so taking carbon out of the atmosphere, that falls under mitigation as well. Resilience is about making sure that your community and your environment is healthy and stable enough to withstand and last and be fruitful well into the future, regardless of threats and hazards, changing conditions, and involves recovering as well. And then adaptation is more of, I like to think of it as like, how do humans exist, right, in the context of our world? We live here. We live in the environment, so of course we would like it to be healthy so that we can be healthy. And adaptation is about, finding ways that you can take your current processes and adapting them so that they can work alongside our changing climate, and that we can not have to live in bunkers underground or something, whatever people are saying about that. So those are official definitions from various sources as well. I mean, everybody's got their own version of it, but that's, I tried to pull ones that are commonly accepted as the officials. Okay, so then what is a climate action plan? Now you can call it sustainability plan, you can call it climate action plan. We're calling ours the emissions reduction roadmap. It's semantics. It means the same thing, essentially, which is how are you going to make the human influence on our environment, either you're going to mitigate it, adapt to it, make your community more resilient, things of that nature. I'm going to point out climate action plan specifically because that's my expertise, but so again, I think I pulled this out on the next slide too, but essentially it's just a document for usually measuring your greenhouse gas emissions, tracking those greenhouse gas emissions over time, and providing strategies to reduce those emissions. That's typically the climate action usually has that piece in it. You can have lots of other plans that maybe don't focus so heavily on that measuring and tracking piece. You don't necessarily need the measuring and tracking to make a plan worthwhile, but it is very helpful, and it is for a measure of like accountability to make sure that the things that you're doing are actually being useful. They typically include targets. I believe the city already has some with the net zero resolution, right? If I'm not right.
Yes.
Yeah. So you would typically include targets. Our targets for the state, we follow the Paris Climate Accord targets set in 2015. That's what we do. You can do even more specific ones if you want, by economic sector or by topic. But those typically are included as well. And then usually some implementation steps as well. So that first little section didn't show up great on the screen, but general overview of the process. And if you've done, and my climate got cut off too, go figure. If you've done, any kind of group project, throw back to the group project comment. A lot of this is still very relevant. You got to do your research. You got to look into previous planning. You kind of have those conversations with key stakeholders, identify what your emissions are, if you're going to include that piece, and then you pull that all together, you draft it, you pull your input in, and you get your analysis, and you kind of organize it all on your big table with your, spreadsheets and everything. And then at the end, you're going to have this wonderful plan that just pop, there it is. So nice and clean. Oh, no, and my icons aren't showing up either. That's such a bummer. That's okay, you got them on your sheets there. If anybody wants to see the fun icons that I put in here, let us know and we can get you a copy of they're so pretty. So I am making an assumption here, and Adam can feel free to tell me if I'm way off based on this, but my guess is that these are your key emission sources and sinks. Stationary energy being the power that's produced to run our city, not just city operations, but residential houses, businesses, etc. Transportation is always a big one. Waste. The land use change and forestry piece is kind of a long term for like those natural climate solutions. In the city, it would be like your street trees, your parks, those are typically a sink, so that's a place where you can capture carbon instead of release it, typically. And then industrial processes, which are kind of separate from industrial building emissions, but relative, it's related. So I'm guessing that's probably what's going to show up in the inventory. It might look a little different than those categories. Those are kind of the categories that we use at the state level. We have a couple additional ones, such as, and I don't see buildings on here either. Did I miss that entirely? I did. Okay, well, I'll add buildings to it. But stationary energy being the energy that's produced to, like at power plants, and then building emissions are usually those that come from like fuel, heating in your homes or your businesses or things like that. So that's energy that's burned like on site in people's houses and in buildings. So apologies that I missed that on there as well. But it's helpful to frame, right? So if you're talking about climate action, you're talking about reducing emissions or creating additional carbon sinks in these areas. And of course, my icons didn't show up here either, and I'm really sad. But so this was guidance directly from EPA for the climate pollution reduction grant that I worked on. They charged us to look at our measures and make sure that they met these 3 A's: actionable, ambitious, and achievable. And essentially, actionable is, it's got to be something that you can actually do. So like if, let's say it was a magic thing here in Wisconsin or in Stevens Point that we didn't have stationary energy emissions. We just don't have power that's being produced here or something. We figured that out already. It's 100% renewable. Adding a measure within your plan to reduce emissions within your stationary energy wouldn't make much sense because you'd have already achieved that. So why would you put that in your plan? You could put in your plan something like maintain 100% clean electricity, but you wouldn't necessarily put something in to reduce if you've already reduced. That's essentially what actionable means. Also, making sure that you have the authority to do the measure. So I misspoke a little earlier when I said that local action accounts for all of climate action. It's not entirely true. Obviously, there are things that the state and the federal government also oversee. Your county, there are authorities that exist elsewhere, but making sure that you have the authority to implement the measure that you are taking on. And if you don't have the authority to implement, can you achieve the authority to implement it? So that all falls under actionable. Ambitious is the piece that I think people who think about climate change, this is a piece we all come back to, right? Which is the 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius warming. But I think ambitious is also a matter of like, we think about it as what's achievable in Wisconsin's political situation. Right? So that's something that we often think about at the state level. What is ambitious for Wisconsin might not be the same as what is ambitious for Louisiana or what is ambitious for, California. We might have different levels of ambition in general. So I think like that's also something that I think about, is where do you sit on how hard do you want to go on something? Are you going to be, yep, we're going to go 100% net zero, we're gonna get down to nothing by 2030. That's pretty darn ambitious, but could you do it by 2050? Yeah, maybe. So reflecting what is your situation here and how hard does a community really want to push on something. And then the last one is achievable. So this is mostly, is it economically and technically feasible is kind of what that comes down to. If you rely entirely on carbon capture and storage solutions, the technology might not be available for you to reach that in the near term, right? If you say, oh, we're gonna achieve our emissions reductions with all carbon capture and storage, and we're gonna do it by 2030, you might not be able to achieve that just because the technology might not be there yet. And economically is, I think, an important piece as well. Does the funding exist? You might find solutions that, you say we want to go to 100% impermeable or permeable surfaces on all of our city streets. And that might cause more problems economically than other solutions. Or, you might not have the funding to be able to do something like that. So keeping that in mind, I think, is another piece. So it all boils down to like realism, right? But ambitious realism, if that's a thing. So some local examples. I love Stevens Point, and I love living here because we have local examples of this. One of the things that we did in our office was look at, and I have to put this in there as a plug for the work that we did with UW-Milwaukee. One of the things that we were looking at when we started the planning was like, well, we wanted our plan to be able to be something that communities could look at and say, okay, I see our community listed in the state's plan. I see things that we can achieve in the state plan. So we wanted to know what are the things that communities are talking about. Not everybody has a climate action plan that we can look at. A lot of communities in Wisconsin don't have anything beyond their comprehensive plan that they do every 20 years or whatever. So we said, well, can we pull things out of those existing plans and use those? They might not think of them as sustainability actions or climate actions, but they are, right? It's back to semantics. Like you might not call, you might not call something like replacing your heater so that you are using a more efficient heater. You might think of that as more of a fiscal or a financial measure, but is also a sustainability measure. So we got a whole bunch of interns at UW-Milwaukee to go through over 200 community plans across the state to pull out all those actions that they thought would relate to sustainability and put them in a big old database for us. So that's available. If you want to dig through that, it's fun. That's just me putting a plug in for it. But that is I think it also shows you what's happening in the community. So Portage County has something you can draw from. You know, your neighboring communities have plans that you can look to as well. Stevens Point, obviously UW-SP has recently done their climate action resiliency planning, but they also have a long history of climate planning too. And I think, you know, the timeliness of this is just wonderful, and I'm really glad you guys are looking at this right now, because you can draw from the work that they've already done and some of the engagement that they've already done as well, and pull that in. So. And then, of course, this is what I could find of the city's history on this matter. So you guys have already talked about this a little bit tonight. I'm not going to dive into it too much, but you can see recent years that there's been a lot of city action around this as well. But Stevens Point has a rich history in climate planning, and you guys are just the next step in it. Okay. Now, it's going back to my first point. I got through a whole lot of stuff about like what is climate action planning, what goes into it. It's a lot of big words, a lot of different pieces that are that can feel very daunting and very unwieldy. But I really put this up here to let you know that you're not alone on this journey, and there are a lot of technical assistance providers out there who are interested in helping communities who are working on this step. So in addition to having the University of Stevens Point here and our wonderful professors that work on climate action planning and, you know, experts in the fields and in all of these different areas, you also have the Wisconsin Local Government Climate Coalition, which the city is a part of, the DNR's Green Tier Legacy Communities program, which the city is a part of. There's Climate Table, which is a nonprofit organization of organizations in Wisconsin. They put together a toolkit for communities who are working on climate action planning, and they also have a resource hub that's just amazing. It's got so much information in it. If you want to dive into any topic, they've got something there for you. And then C40, I believe, C40 is another nonprofit, which is like the larger communities, larger cities in the states that are working on this, but they also have a wonderful knowledge hub as well. And then EPA's Smart Growth Program is still there, and there are still some resources available through the federal government too. So there's a lot of different places out there that you can go to for either information or help. You don't have to develop this on your own. Please don't reinvent the wheel. Climate action planning is happening in communities all over the place. As you learn from the city of Middleton, you're not alone. And I'm a big fan of, like, you don't have to do this all on your own, right? Like, you don't have to completely reinvent things. The Wisconsin Local Government Climate Coalition also produced a table of actions that their members had kind of weighed in on and said these are the common actions that cities will take. Everybody's situation is a little unique. Everybody's inventory will tell them something slightly different. Maybe you have more emissions in buildings than another community, or you have more in transportation. But a lot of those strategies for reducing greenhouse gas emissions are going to look very similar across communities. You might want to prioritize certain things over others based on your community's desires and needs, but a lot of those actions are going to be very similar. And WLGCC has a wonderful resource that actually breaks down that whole "do we have the authority to do it" question too. And so anyway, that's just to say there's a lot of support for the work that you guys are doing, and you don't have to do it alone. And I have like a million more links that I can share with you too. Okay, so we've gotten through the lots of detail and data and all of the things that you have to synthesize in order to decide what kind of actions you want to put into your plan. Another big piece of the whole planning process is the outreach and engagement. So I love this quote. Leslie Knope is my hero. But what I hear when I'm being yelled at is people carrying loudly at me. People care about this topic. They might be passionate. A lot of people in our community are very passionate about sustainability. Getting their voices heard, one way or the other, is just part of the process, and we want them to be speaking up and sharing that information. So outreach and engagement, let's take a Leslie Knope approach and just dive right in. One of our favorite sayings at our office, relationships are built at the speed of trust, and social change happens at the speed of relationships. You can't do it if you don't have relationships with your partners in your community. So you've already done a really excellent job of engaging with your departments at the city. I think there's still a lot of opportunity for you to engage with businesses in the community, and other partners that you have here, other resources. And I would just encourage you to think about it in that terms, right? A lot of climate action is dependent on social behavior, and you can't force people to do behavior change. And if they don't have a trust in the system, or you don't have a relationship with your community, not to say that any of you don't, I'm just saying, like, in general, as we think about this as public servants, they need to know that they can trust that the information that we're putting out there is going to help them. And the only way they can do that is by, being engaged with and having relationships built. Okay. So I did think it might be prudent to look at what City of Middleton did for engagement, just as an example of what that might look like. So I put in red there some of the specific stakeholders that they spoke with, right? City staff, members of the Common Council, city committees, boards, and commissions. But they also wanted to hear from the people. So in order to hear from the general public, they presented their draft plan for public review. They did 2 public input sessions and did an online survey. Those are all very common methods of public engagement that I would greatly appreciate seeing happen in our community. I think people would love to weigh in on this, and I would highly encourage that kind of outreach for something like this. The state we developed a whole group of groups again called the Wisconsin Climate Action Navigators Network, just to get at all of those different community-based organizations that were doing work on climate, bring them together and have that pipeline of information. But this is an example of something that I think is very realistic for a city commission to look into doing for public engagement. Here's a couple examples of stakeholders: community partners, city council members, community members, department heads, business representatives. You have a lot of really great businesses here in Stevens Point that are excited by this idea of sustainability. I think in some ways more than I've seen in a lot of communities, and I think you should leverage that quite a bit. That's my personal opinion on it.
Do you know who those businesses are?
Oh, I got a list, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I can get you a list. And just from my own personal experience being here, and I have a feeling a number of you on the commission here are familiar with a lot of the big names. But I think,
And so what do you mean by, working collaboratively with the city, or?
Getting their input on. Yeah, I think of the downtown, what is it called? The Downtown Management Bureau or
Business Improvement District.
Business Improvement District. They would be a wonderful one to talk to. I know that those businesses down there are pretty tight, and they all work pretty closely together on different ideas. And our downtown is one to be envious of, and I think other communities are realizing that now. But what a great resource that we have right there, right? And then we have lots of other ones too. Stevens Point is a community with a lot of really strong business connections. And I think their voices deserve to be heard in that too. Okay, so planning for the plan. This is the actual thing. I wanted to get through all of that, so you kind of had understood where I was coming from and understood sort of the background of what climate planning is. The goal here is not for you guys to sit, and based on conversations with Greg, it's not for you guys to sit down and crank out a plan by the end of the year. Planning takes time, takes effort. You can certainly weigh in on decisions prior to that, as we've already suggested. You don't have to wait for a plan to be done to be actively engaged in your government and bring good things forward to department heads and things of that nature. You can have all those conversations all along the way. But if you want to present something to the council, an update to the 2008 plan or an update to the update in 2017 or something entirely new, that is a group project process. And what does that look like? So this was taken from that C40, and I apologize for how small it is, but they have that resource hub that has, like, how do you do planning on how do you do climate planning, which I thought was really great. But this is kind of the overview of what does a community's climate action plan involve. Some of this might be, I think it's all well within your grasp. It's just a matter of how much time do you have to complete something like this. You've been doing a lot of this already. So for example, you've already gotten started, good job. Building your evidence base, you've been working on that. You've been talking to your department heads, gathering information, learning all along the way. You've probably already, I heard tonight, you've already identified some strategies, such as fleet planning, coming up with some food waste planning, inventorying buildings. Those are strategies you've already sort of identified as things that you would like to see done. Now you're getting into the action prioritization and detailing piece, which is now that you have sort of that base understanding of what's happening in Stevens Point, how do you pull specific strategies out of it, maybe flesh them out a little bit for Stevens Point, and then prioritize them. And then the plan compilation is pulling it all together, and then all that monitoring, evaluation, and reporting happens after you've already published it. So you're already well on your way, and that's great. Good job. Things like stakeholder and community engagement and that governance piece, those happen throughout. So there is no set timeline for that kind of stuff. It's really what you're most comfortable with. So these were some things, I guess, ways to think of it. I put budget meetings on there. I'm sure there are other things that are relevant there, but I'll come back to that in a minute. So the green line is your potential outreach and engagement. That's your public survey, your remaining department speakers that you want to listen to, stakeholder meetings, public input, whether that's, looking at a draft plan or whatever that may be. That's that top outreach and engagement line. The middle one is really focusing on plan development. So presenting your progress to your council this fall was, the idea that Greg brought up of giving them some sort of progress update in November. Understanding your inventory can happen, in August when Adam brings it to you all. Discussing measures would really be the bulk of what you're working on for, however long you decide to work on this. And then ultimately you'd be presenting some recommendations to the council at some point too. So I didn't put dates on there because I think this is the piece that you want to figure out, right? But those are sort of the pieces that you're going to fit into that mix. And then that bottom budget meetings, whatever, those are the things that happen kind of continuously throughout. So whether it's, looking at the city's plan or the city's city hall bids and weighing in recommendations on that, or if there's some other, thing that comes before the council that you can give a decision on, that can happen at any point in time. So that doesn't have to necessarily fit into your timeline picture, but it's helpful to know that those things are happening and you should be thinking about them as well. Okay, that's what I got.
I think at this point, like, I can take questions on anything. We can go back to something. I kind of breeze through it all really fast. If you have, questions, I'm happy to answer any. And then I don't know how we're doing on our original plan of time. But it doesn't really matter, right?
I mean, the meetings take as long as they take.
Well, so, yeah, we're coming up on.
Oh no, he's got a look on his face like maybe not.
I don't want to, because I got a question, a very specific niche thing.
Oh,
If
okay.
somebody else wanted other stuff, I'd hold off and wait to.
No, if you have a question, why don't you go ahead and.
I've been curious about this aspect of carbon sinks and how we go about monetizing or capitalizing them as a municipality. If we come back after our greenhouse gas inventory and we look at city operations, like our city forest efforts have actually got us in a negative. How long have we been negative? How much carbon can we claim? The tonnage and credits, and what does that come to? How do I get my city staff to understand how to build a carbon bank for us as a municipality? Where does that fit into our operations? Because I know, like, we have this 45 years we've been a Tree City USA. If you watched our Parks Board meeting last night, just fantastic what we've been able to do in this community. To understand where we're at and what we could be doing in the future when it comes to our forest products, as under our forestry department we are allowed to sell and capitalize. How do I get my people that background, that training to build us that thing? Because I don't know where to send them at this point. I don't know where to find it. And I'm looking for, like, how do we as a city create a carbon bank somewhere in our city departments, and eventually, if there's enough there, leverage it to do some of these projects, or get, into partnership on these other projects that are in the city, like we want to do with housing. Okay, this is some sort of sustainable community effort, we could call it, but like we're utilizing our other carbon commitment stuff to monetize and bring to fruition some of these projects earlier than we would be.
Sure. So I think there's a couple different pieces there. One, I would say the first thing is understanding your current carbon sinks in that area, right? Which I'm hoping the inventory touches that. Great. So in August, you'll know kind of what is the picture of Stevens Point's, carbon sinks in natural lands, forestry, things like that. So that would be step one. The discussion of carbon markets specifically around forest products or forestry in general, live trees, is still one that's, I think, evolving, because the understanding of carbon sequestration in forestry is evolving. And I don't want to say like it exists, like people are working on that. There are markets already out there that I know. I don't think there are any in Wisconsin that you can necessarily tap into, but there's similar to like California's markets and stuff. Like there are markets out there that you could look at as models, but I will say that like that piece is still, that would be a very it'd be on the cutting edge. Yeah.
Check the ambitious.
It'd be ambitious. And you know what? As a tree city, and a city with a forestry, department on campus that's interested and eager, I think to answer some of those questions. And like Wisconsin is, it's always very fun to see us. There's like maybe 4 forestry states, right? It's like us, Georgia, Washington, and Oregon are like the ones that always come up as like, these are the, big ones for forestry. And I'm going to brag here, but I had a gentleman from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. I was like, what can Wisconsin do better around forestry? And he's like, you're the ones that I point to and say, do it like them. So, I mean, feather in our cap. But to that point, I think, it might be ambitious, but it's also something that I think Wisconsin would excel at. Heather, I noticed you were kind of thinking of things.
I think my personal perspective would just be that we are a very long way from I don't know, running a surplus of carbon credits. I considering the historical emissions of any location in the developed world, I would be very, very surprised if we are at the point of having a surplus to work with, but I do agree that it would be very cool to know more about where we stand and are there ways that we can. I will doubt we will ever get to the point of being able to leverage that for funding, but at the very least being able to leverage it in terms of reminding people why our forests in the city and the state are such a valuable resource.
Yeah. If I can add to that, and I think you bring up a very good point, that like when you talk about credits or carbon credits, whether they're from energy or forestry or any other source, I think those are like the two big ones right now, you can claim those credits and that would show up in your inventory, right? Like you're saying, here's our forestry credits, we're claiming those. That reduces our inventory, like our emissions, closer to net zero. In cases where a carbon market exists for something like that, you're essentially selling the rights to claim that. And I don't think you want to do that. It's the same thing with renewable energy. If you put renewable energy on all city buildings, they have energy credits that come with every kilowatt hour of energy that's produced by renewable energy. And you can sell those on a carbon market and you can get that as income. But it's kind of two-faced to then say, oh, we're claiming that renewable energy as like, look at us, we're doing the great thing, because you've sold your credits. It's complicated business, and I will say that is not my expertise. And what I look at in terms of budgeting for those kinds of things is the inventory is your guidebook. That's your goalpost. If you want to have funding to work with, there are lots of ways to get it beyond carbon markets. There's savings that you can have from there's like energy performance savings contracting and things of that nature that you can do that can create revolving loan funds and stuff to get you some capital to work with. So good question. Follow up. I might have more to share on that after I do a little bit more research. But.
And I guess I just want to jump in because I think like the idea that you're bringing up and like this is what you should include in your plan or what, and those are the kind of recommendations that would be made in a plan to the city. I guess I'm just thinking about the purposes of the discussion for tonight is to really I'm thinking about the process and I want to make sure that we don't get too dived into the actual plans. Again, this is supposed to be planning for the plan. So I think we should start having a discussion about, just a general timeline for the commission as far as like, when do we want to see a plan complete? And I think this is going to be like a question to both the commission, but also Adam and Katie. Adam, from your city perspective, you know how long planning processes take. Katie also has some expertise on how long climate action planning takes. Obviously, you've already done a lot of work as far as taking in inventory and data collection from the different departments. But I guess we kind of need to just start nailing down what does that end goal, end date look like, and kind of we can work backwards then a little bit from there as far as those different pieces along the way. But
Yeah, a few thoughts. I think you want to set some rough benchmarks primarily to keep all of us honest in terms of meeting deadlines for certain phases of the project. I don't think we need to be ultra specific saying that we want to complete it by this specific month and this specific year, because stuff's always going to happen, right? But I think just thinking aloud, one of the early questions you folks will have to figure out, and this is going back to Katie's comment from earlier, is what's your public involvement plan going to be? And specifically, what are going to be the different methods that you're going to be interacting with various stakeholders? At what points in the process are you looking to engage members of the public? Personally, I'm always a fan of you hit it hard, hit the ground running right at the jump, early on in the plan. So you gain momentum, you get stakeholders involved, you get them passionate in the project, and hopefully it's just a snowball effect as you progress through the creation of the plan from there. But obviously throughout the planning process, you'll want to have consistent interactions with the public. When you're disseminating the data, when you're creating your draft goals, objectives, and policies, you want to have some consistent collaboration with the public. When we're talking about process, ensuring that when you're looking to sell the plan to the public and get that plan approved by the council, that there's less road bumps when you get to that point, that everybody has a fair amount of familiarity with it, and you can hit the ground running. So I think when you're thinking of timelines, that's a big part, is really the scope of the public engagement, and really at what phases in the planning process do you want to have that. I think a second thing is, this is maybe emblematic of some of the conversations had tonight. I mean, you heard, I know both Katie's mentioned this just previously, of, we're hearing some policy recommendations already being discussed, which is great. I think one of the first, this is like page 1 of any long-range plan, is really explaining the why, right? I think we all generally have an understanding of the why, of why we're looking to have a climate action plan. I think what's important is you folks probably have a different niche in terms of explaining the why, like where your background's coming from. So when you're looking at the structure of the plan as a whole, explaining the why, I think, is going to be explaining the why and having some mutual understanding amongst you folks and the stakeholders that you engage with through the public involvement process. I think that's going to be an early action. So there's a lot more, but I think honestly that's the biggies for right now, is since public involvement is usually one of the early stages with any long-range planning process. I think hammering that down of what that all looks like is going to be key.
Well, actually, just right before you were speaking, I was already starting to think. So, what month would it make the most sense to send out a survey about? And so, I don't know that we would necessarily want to start with a survey, but I believe for the zoning, then we saw the surveys first, and then after you had gathered some of that kind of basic information as to what people were looking for, then you moved on to the stakeholder meetings to get the more kind of in-depth.
Yeah, and I'm thinking to address that commentary, one of the things you'll have to think about ahead of time before you start crafting surveys, and if you're having focus group conversations, and determine what the structure of that focus group conversation is going to be, is ultimately what's going to be the structure of the plan. Now, there's basic structures of the plan, like your intro, your hardcore data, your goals, objective policies, the implementation and evaluation section. Like, that's pretty commonplace for any plan that both Kaities can address to. But specifically, when we're talking about really the meat of the document, your goals and policies, what structure within that policy recommendation section do you want to focus on? Do you want to focus, like what Katie brought up, looking at the different kind of broad sectors that make up sustainability, buildings, energy, transportation, et cetera? Do you want to structure the plan in that format, another format? And I think that's where both Kaities can be really valuable with. But I think that's an early action I think that this commission should look at, because that's going to help guide how you engage the public through public engagement. When you're thinking of, say, survey questions that you want to ask the public, having an understanding of the structure of the plan is going to be key.
That's true. That's true. And thinking on resources that are available to sort of help you think through that. Obviously, you could look at other city plans and just be like, you know what, I really love City of Middleton's, and let's go with something like that. You can use theirs as a template if you want. There are other tools out there like Climate Tables Toolkit that have sort of templates and things that you can think about. Typically with climate action plans, you're going to have those basic, your introduction, your greenhouse gas inventory, targets and projections, and then you're going to organize your recommendations somehow, whether that's by economic sector, which is how we did it, the buildings, transportation, industry, energy, that kind of stuff. Or you could do it by like city operations versus public programs. You could kind of organize that however it pleases you, really. But I do think Adam's right in that it is helpful to kind of know the basics of like how you want to organize things for public engagement purposes. For the state, we did a survey which had more general questions about like what is important to people as far as climate impacts, what things do they care about in terms of their communities. They were very broad. They weren't getting into specific policy recommendations that the public was going to make. We didn't expect them to say, we want the state to reduce vehicle miles traveled by blah, blah, blah by a certain time. But then we also had like stakeholder teams organized around those different sectors. So we could have conversations with, if we're talking waste, you can bring in the Portage County waste, you can bring in Recycling Connections, Bucket Ruckus, some of those other waste voices, and you can have a talk about waste and what's important to that sector. It's up to you how much time you want to take doing those kinds of conversations and what that looks like. I think it would be, if it were me, I would probably be wanting to know a little bit more about the inventory before I was diving into specific conversations with stakeholder groups, like focus groups or something like that. Just because I think then you have a sense of what is Stephen's Point's big sectors for emissions and what are sectors, hey, are we really doing great on trees? And, like we think we are? And if so, like, maybe our conversation around that doesn't have to be as robust because we're nailing it in that sector versus, another one where maybe we need a lot more help.
So are you saying there that until we have that greenhouse gas inventory, that's still a critical piece of information that's missing?
I think so. I think it is.
And then that's going to help us determine what are major categories of greenhouse gas emissions or topics that we should be perhaps looking at.
Yeah.
And then asking the question, I suppose, yeah, that's a big one, but it'd be hard to tackle, or it costs a lot of money, or what, or whatever.
Yeah.
So where's the low-hanging fruit, you know? Try to get the easy wins first.
Right. And like if you find out that energy is the biggest sector in Stevens Point, and by a long shot, like we did at the state, you know, energy was the state's biggest emissions sector for a long time, though that, from my understanding, that might flip, so. But then that's why we focused on the clean energy plan first, and we came out strong on that one topic to start with. And it was like energy, buildings, transportation, and that's where we put a lot of our focus.
But I would also imagine that we're going to try to leverage what we're already doing.
And I would just ask this right now. Maybe Adam can speak to it. What is the scope that you're actually looking at? Because like when we say city, I feel like there's some sort of like conflation going on between city operations and the 26,000 people of Stevens Point as the city. And so like, what are you actually going to be inventorying?
Inventorying will be community as a whole, not just city operations. Now, I mean, that's an important question to ask in the context of the climate action plan is, do you want to split that up? Do you want to have a whole separate section focusing specifically on city ops? Personally, I'd advise that would be a really smart idea to do, because that's going to be a lot easier for the commission, the elected officials to, it's really going back to the low-hanging fruit. And this was actually a conversation that Katie and I had a couple weeks ago, a week or two ago, about when you're talking, yes, the data is going to drive a lot of what you're going to decide. I think philosophically, one of the questions that you folks may want to think about is, when you're crafting policy recommendations, when you're creating the implementation schedule, there are a lot of different strategies that you can go about, regardless of topic area when creating a long-term plan. I'm going to use a baseball reference, so apologies for the non-baseball aficionados. But basically, like, you have all the different sections that makes up your policy recommendations. You know, in this case, your buildings, your energy, your transportation, et cetera. Do you want to have an implementation that kind of takes an even-keeled approach along all areas? You're not going, now I wouldn't say above and beyond is the right terminology, but you're not going hardcore in one area. You're kind of spreading the goods across all areas. Do you want to take that approach, or do you want to take an approach where you hammer hard on one or two specific areas? Do you want to be, a 5-tool player? You don't excel in one area, but you're not bad in one? Or do you want to be like a 40 home run, 200 strikeout type of batter, where you're really killer hitting the home run, hitting the fastball, but you whiff a ton? And I think that's just, a philosophical question that this commission should think about is, what strategy do you want to pursue, right? The data is going to dictate some of that, but also it's just a question when we're talking about the effectiveness of the plan once it's adopted. That's an important variable. And there's going to be constraints. I mean, one of you talked about financial constraints being a significant one. So.
And I would just like to make one additional point, and this is not meant negatively towards those who just used the phrase, but I think we should also be psychologically prepared as we work on this plan that the city has been working on the low-hanging fruit for, at least since 2008. So a lot of what we might consider the low-hanging fruit has been done, which is awesome. We are also at a point in history where we have been passing the 1.5 degrees Celsius mark. We are most likely about to have, the another extremely high temperature record this next year or two with El Nino. People are dying in all sorts of climate tragedies. And at some point, we might want to push our recommendations beyond the low-hanging fruit to okay, it's time that we actually get serious about tackling this. So just, kind of as we're thinking about what we want to recommend, I guess one thing that really struck me back when we were first having the discussions and the push to get the commission in the first place was this tension between the people who are let's shoot for the moon because that's what we need to do, and the people who were okay, but if we already know we're not going to get to the moon, then it's kind of pointless to push that hard. Let's go for something we think is actually achievable. And I do find myself more in that latter camp. But I think we do want to be prepared to say, how ambitious can we get at this point?
I'm so happy to having Katie here, and also Adam said something I just wanted to say. I think I want to say three things. My experience this semester, I have a climate change class, and we look at about a 15 climate action plan, and also having some guest speaker in my class. It was interesting because we talk about that component, all of the component you saw today. Mm-hmm. But we have one guest speaker from Monroe County, and he came to class, and students, they're looking for scope 1, scope 2, greenhouse gas emission, but he said nothing about that. He just talked about the flood, flood resiliency, and what we are doing for climate, everything about the flood, and then we ask, okay, why you are talking about? He said, because that's our problem. What I'm saying, if you want to sell your plan, you should be able to, the language you are speaking is so important. If it's a flood, talk to us about the flood. My personal experience, every day I will go to the gym, and when I talk with some people, what are you doing? I am teaching in UW-SPA. When I'm saying for somebody I am teaching climate change, they don't listen to me. They're just gone because they don't believe in it. And when I get to closer to them, say, okay, I don't believe in that, but I think I hit by that. Okay, but I talk in another language with them. This is why I'm saying, if you want to sell it, see who is there. And then, doesn't matter. You're talking about the street. Okay, talk about that. That's, again, climate change. That's the one thing, the language we are using. Another one about the engagement. I think if you want to sell it, your plan work, you should start from now for community engagement. It doesn't matter. You don't need a session. So several times I went to a business council. We have business chamber of commerce, and they have gathering, and they're really nice people. You can talk with them and tell them that's what we are doing, and you sell it to the different people. That's just one. Sometimes we have a gathering, we have a music festival, whatever. We should start from now, just selling it, because you want to put in action in the future. Okay, then from now you should start in a different way. It doesn't matter. And about the low-hanging fruit, I think today we saw something. They want to sell something. Okay, that's you just try. You don't need to just helping them. That's a part of the climate action plan. Mm-hmm. That's a low-hanging fruit. Mm-hmm. I know there is something happening about the complete street for Division Street. Okay, that's a climate action plan. Actually, it's the best one. That's a low-hanging fruit. You don't need to do anything. They just try to make an impact on them. Okay, if you are doing, support them, but in a way that works. Mm-hmm. University, they want to do something. Tell them, okay, that's really great. If you want to put more solar, again, it's a climate action plan. Mm-hmm. That's a low-hanging fruit. It's just supporting them. The people, they say, okay, you did a good job. But I think what Adam said is so important about that. The data, always we need the data for support. Mm-hmm. But sometimes we have a data and we just talk in a different language. As I said, in my experience, we had a guest speaker, they talk about climate action plan in the university, all about the data. That data we got, that data we got, that's but another one from the community, nothing. And he said, okay, we have Amish people. They don't care about this kind of stuff. And even they don't listen to us. This is why we have some new equipment. They just, it's like a light. When we say it's a storm, then we spread that light and they know it's a storm coming. The language is different for people. This is why just considering this kind of language is important, I think, in Wisconsin, at least, based on what I know, I learned in 2 years. Thank you.
Okay.
So I'm realizing like a lot of information has been shared over the last 2 hours. And I'm like wondering about, I'm thinking there's like some decisions that can't necessarily be made in this moment. There's a lot of like reflection that needs to happen. And I'm just like wondering if there's like some homework pieces that might be happening in the meantime. Like obviously you're going to be having a conversation with the mayor in the next few weeks. At the end of the summer, we'll have more information about this greenhouse gas inventory. Just trying to figure out like where we're at right now. I'm guessing we can't truly set a timeline for ourselves right now, but I'm guessing you want to jump in with something. So I'm just like thinking through where we're at right now, and I think we just threw a lot of information at you. And there's probably needs to be some time to think through and have further discussion before.
So, just to kind of reiterate, so yes, we need to hear the greenhouse gas inventory report. We need to have that conversation with the mayor. Mm-hmm. And then we're going to go, get involved in the city hall.
I think there's some good work that's
project.
like obviously underway that you can already get involved in. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's why I wonder if a good homework assignment is to just get familiar with, scan some other communities in the state, their adopted climate action plan. Because generally speaking, the structure's relatively similar. There's some nuances involved with each of the plans given their unique circumstances, but some of the philosophical questions like how do we engage the public, what are the different strategies you could take, what's the structure of the plan, what are the buckets that they focused on when creating policy recommendations. I wonder if just taking a scan through some climate action plans adopted here in the state would be a good first step.
I would add or amend that to looking at climate tables toolkit, because I think they did that work for you and came up with a really handy toolkit that kind of summarizes that, and they have examples of climate plans from other communities that you can look at right there on their website.
Is that
so it's the climate table. It's on the resources page.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
If you search for Wisconsin Climate Table Toolkit, it should come up.
Okay.
It's under it's under their local planning section. I think that would be a wonderful place to start with kind of thinking, and maybe if all of you were able to, look at those resources, say, "Ooh, yeah, I really like the way that this thing is laid out," or, "Okay, now I see better what the vision is for developing a plan." And maybe you also understand then kind of scope, and you can say, wow, this is not something that I can accomplish by the end of this year, or maybe it would take us another year, and what can we do in the meantime, or whatever, however you guys decide to do that.
So looking at the June meeting date, and then July is no meeting, August is the greenhouse gas inventory report, September, October. Do we still want to, I can contact, or try to contact Bucket Ruckus. They've been hard, but you sent me an email about how to.
Or I can do it.
Can you do it?
Yeah, or between us.
Yeah, can you do that? Because
we got the connections.
All right.
I can do it. I'll talk to Kelly. I love Kelly.
Okay, so.
My question is, what are we doing next month?
That's.
Because y'all are coming back again? Or
That's entirely up to you. I would say that's entirely up to you. If you guys are feeling good about like, okay, yeah, we kind of get a good understanding of what we, maybe after you look at climate table stuff or something, you're like, yeah, no, I think we kind of are able to take it from here. I'm not your expert in city climate planning. I'm and subject matter expert in climate planning in general. There are really great resources out there. I'd be happy to come back I live a block away. I'd be happy to come back if you guys want me to weigh in on things, but this is really what you guys want to do from here on out.
What are you thinking of?
I guess I was just wondering if we could do food waste next month. If we could try to just get them in next month, and because I don't want to put that off, I guess, because I think that would be a good conversation to have, and then obviously no July meeting, and then August we'd have our numbers. So then I feel like we'd have met with everybody that we're interested in meeting with.
Okay.
And I'd feel better about just getting that out of the way earlier.
So that's June 4th.
Yeah.
Do you want to confirm that if they can make that meeting date?
And I guess...
And that would be Bucket
If they
Ruckus?
can't, then, Bucket Ruckus. And I can reach out to Amanda, too, with Portage County.
We could do both at the same time.
Get them both at the same time?
Yeah, we can see if they're both available. But if it doesn't work for them, I guess, then if y'all wanted to be like our backup plan and come back, because I'm excited to dig in, do homework, look at other people, or look at other municipalities' plans, and I guess kind of hit the ground running a little bit more than after doing that. But like I said, I guess I'd rather have Kelly and Amanda come over.
I think that would work good as far as the calendar, because we would get that completed. And then in August, we're going to get that report, greenhouse gas inventory. And
Like
then,
in my mind, September would be great if y'all came back in September.
Sure. I feel like too, thinking through your timing of wanting to give some sort of update to Common Council. You don't have to have a plan in place to do that, but you can at least, give a summary of what you've accomplished over the last year. By September, the greenhouse gas inventory will be, or November, whatever, it'll be, it'll be complete, obviously, end of summer, but by the time you start having those conversations in the fall, you'll at least be able to give a solid update and know, where you're going by the time you want to give that update in November, if that.
Okay, so September, possibly
sense.
October for working on putting our timeline and ideas and outlines and stuff together.
Yeah, I think that would be great.
Okay.
Because the one other thing I'm wondering is, as both Hadi and Adam pointed out, we probably want to do a lot more public engagement than we have done so far. And so I wonder if we actually want to maybe even already in this June meeting just have an agenda item at the end to kind of start talking through what different kinds of engagement we would like to do, and maybe some potential timeline just for that portion of it, so that we can kind of start working backwards and figuring out when we will need to plan some of these things, so that we're ready to reach out beyond the commission.
So are you proposing to also have an additional topic in June of public engagement, or should we be saving that for a later date?
I see somebody wanting to make a suggestion.
My only issue with public engagement, and I guess I want to ask this question to the group, is I feel like before I engage the public, I got to show them something. And I'm not sure exactly what I would show them, because right now it's like, I think we got everything from soup to nuts. There's a lot of ways we can go. A lot of things we could talk about, a lot of things we could focus on. And we got not enough time to do all that. We would need a commission 3 times the size or something.
Yeah. Adam can speak on this, but I really don't think you do have to have anything figured out before you talk to the public. I think your early public engagement can be things like, what's important to you?
Right.
What are you thinking of in terms of climate? And what are you proud of from Stevens Point? And what do you think we're doing well? And what would you like to see more of? Or, your early engagement doesn't necessarily have to be, here's what we're planning. What do you think? It can be what do you think we should be talking about?
Like, I want to put a survey out so they give us ideas.
Exactly.
They can do the heavy lifting.
And you have
they
so
can give us
many
ideas.
experts
It's like-
here.
And see what's just like important
Right.
to
Go ahead.
residents.
Like, we did a survey, correct, for our comp plan and our zoning rewrite about just what are you guys not seeing that's not up to date, or you want to see up to date, you know? Like,
Yeah, I mean, for that, for historic pres plan, for aging plans, like you could have a base, you know, when we were talking about getting buy-in from the public for what you're looking to do, it's really helpful to approach the public with a clean slate to ask them, what do you know, what are your values? What are your, what do you value? What are our strengths here in our, it's too late in the night. What are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? Again, really to establish that values. And that's where looking at some previously adopted plans, a decent plan will outline the public involvement strategies that they took. And if they're published surveys or any of that, a lot of the really nice ones include the survey template in the plan as an appendix. So when you're thinking of how do I figure out the survey questions, it's better to just use other resources to your advantage instead of just starting from scratch.
Do not reinvent the wheel.
Work smarter, not harder.
But I think if you wanted to do a survey, like, you can also do that multiple times. So, like, you could put one out this summer. You could say, yeah, you know what, let's give it a try. And then you could do one in the fall. Or, you know, you can do those multiple times. It's really, but I have no idea how you build a survey by committee, so I don't know how that works.
Yeah. Well, I guess kind of my thought process here is that during the summer, people are out on vacation and the students are gone, so probably it would make logical sense to wait until September when, you know, students are back, people are more engaged. But if we want to have a survey ready to go out to the public in September, then that probably means that August we want to be like deciding if our draft survey is something we all agree with, which probably means that in June we need to be like, okay, what topics do we want to cover? You know, like even how are we going to make this? Is this going to be Qualtrics or Polka or you know, whatever? And then who are we going to send it out to? So I just feel like we don't, I absolutely am not suggesting we try and like plan out all our entire public engagement in June when we already have other people we want to talk to. But I just think maybe some initial brainstorming, making sure we have a plan and maybe do some delegation and homework assignments would then set us up for being able to send out one of these, you know, what are you thinking kind of surveys in the fall.
When you're talking about the efficiency of the planning process, I think the commission will have to figure out which tasks require committee consideration and approval versus what can be done, quote unquote, behind the scenes, right? I don't think it's realistic for everything to go before this commission because it's going to bog you folks down. It's going to take time. Yeah. What that is, I mean, I think it's more just a gut check, to be honest.
Trust and relationships.
Yeah. Look at that.
There
we go.
Full
So, who's going to do this?
I think Heather just volunteered herself.
I mean, you know, my opinion would be, you know, find a survey you think will work. You know, and we can send it on the email train around to the commission members. We don't have to even meet or have it as a meeting topic if you've got some ideas and you find some good examples out there. You know, then maybe we can get going on that.
Is that something we'd have to like say, bring forward together, like the open meetings laws of Wisconsin? You know, like
ding, ding, ding,
as much as like, yeah, it doesn't seem to be. If we discuss anything that's related to city business without being it's not okay. So like, as much as Yeah, I want to see your guys' thoughts. Apparently, we can't do that until we're like in an open meeting together.
Yeah, so my interpretation.
The draft of like a list
Yeah,
of
my
your
interpretation
top
would be
15
like
questions.
I could come up with a draft, but then I'd want to bring it here and like, okay, are you all good with this? Do you have any changes?
That sounds like a good topic for next month, or like, come with your top 15 questions.
Okay.
And kind of.
Okay. Yeah.
I would like a survey out. I know you're saying like people are gone in the summer, but I don't know. I guess like the students that aren't freshmen, sophomores stay here. You know, like they usually have houses rented through the summer. You know, if that's like part of the stakeholders that we're, I guess, concerned about reaching, I suppose. But I guess I would like just, public input first survey completed around the same time probably that we have that greenhouse gas information as well, because I want to see if their ideas correlate to where we can see that we can make improvements. And then I would like to send a more detailed one out fall, winter, whatever, when we kind of have an idea where we would like to go. So I guess I would like to see 2 surveys out already this year.
I like that.
Personally, right when I got on this council, I wanted to do a survey. So I've been waiting over a year to do a survey. I've just been like, let's go. I want input.
I get it, yeah.
Yeah. And I guess, again, not to reinvent the wheel, I think we can grab a lot of ideas out of the zoning code rewrite that Adam already did, because there's the, night sky friendly lighting or whatever, like that kind of stuff. And I think he's already kind of touched on some stuff in the zoning code rewrite. So we don't have to ask, I guess, those types of questions because we already have information about that.
I love to be able to kind of get a gauge of public support on certain things too. Just like, okay, this is the thing to charge at right now. People want it versus like, oh, this is actually just something, it's a me thing.
Right.
Yeah, and survey, when you're developing a survey, that would be a deliverable where it'd be better for the commission as a whole to review it in obviously public forum, because the creation of survey questions, the methodology behind it, it's an art. I think that was like a sole class for me in grad school. So like it's a big thing, and so you want to skirt around the dynamics of not having a leading question, that you have an equilibrium of the type of answer prompts that you have. I'm getting real academic here, and I apologize, but like there's a lot. It's just you folks needing to figure out which task can be handled, can be trusted to be put under the shoulders of one particular person that doesn't need sign off by the commission as a whole. So.
I would also say, though, that nobody's going to be, well, maybe, but you're not doing this survey for academic purposes. Yeah. So don't stress yourself out too much about survey creation.
And there are examples that exist.
Yeah, and there are good examples.
I'm guessing there's...
I'd be happy to share ours with you, too, if you want to see that.
Mm-hmm. That would be lovely.
Yeah. I got it down here, so examples are nice.
Okay. We have topics for June. So is there any other thing we need to cover tonight? Okay, so that brings us to the end of the agenda, I think.
Good job, folks.
So do we got to take a motion for adjournment, or we can just adjourn?
I'll take a motion for adjournment.
Sure.
Sam?
Seconded.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are adjourned.